You are tuned in to the Black Talk Radio Network. For podcasts and live program scheduling, visit us on the web at blacktalkradionetwork.com. The views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Whether you're dealing with engineering or technology, when you talk about writing and reading, when you're talking about the refinement of speech, when you talk about grammar or the dialectic, or if you're talking about concepts of astronomy or music.
The people from the Nile Valley were the very first people to develop a concept of time. Time is a concept that sprang from the minds of African people. They were the first people to divide the day into 24 hours. They were the first people to develop the calendar, 365 and a quarter days. They were the first people to build with stone. They were the first people to develop systems of education, the first universities, they invented writing, they invented paper, they developed libraries, they were the first physicians, the first psychologists, the first dentists, the first brain surgeons, they were the first governors, the first rulers, the first men and women to orient structures to celestial bodies in order to harness the spiritual energy that's generated within a structure that is properly aligned to celestial spheres. So in other words, they were human beings who knew how to manifest the power of God on earth.
You're quite hostile. I got a right to be hostile, man. My people been persecuted.
Nonviolent. In the face of the violence that we've been experiencing for the past 400 years, is actually doing our people a disservice. In fact, it's a crime. It's a crime.
Here come the drums. All right. Yeah. All right. Here come the drums. All right. Yeah. All right. Bass in your face, not an 8-track, getting it good to the woods. So the people give you some of that reacting to the facts that I kick in a stick, in a stand around, point to the joint, put the Buddha down. Don't get to the roots, and giving it up, so turn and loose. Then again, I got a story that's harder than a hardcore course. That's the Holocaust, I'm talking about the what's still going on. I know where from that, something ain't done for the bass, for the land, the place for the drum. Invaded by the whack, till they whack, it fools the black, it left us faded.
love now. Caveman is love, and they rewarded with violence. In these last days, lend ears to what I say. Planet is ignorant state, society concealed is on pay. Doctrines of the falling angel, no water, quench eternal flames of hell. Hellfire, I said doctrines of the falling angel, no water, quench eternal flames of hell. Hellfire, earth crisis.
Welcome everyone to the Melanated Roots radio show on the Black Talk Radio Network, brought to you this Monday, and we are having a live show for you this evening. Brother Tommy and Brother Rio is your host for the show today, and our topic for today is AIDS and Ebola, and we're going to deal with these man-made viruses, and we're going to try to give you some information, that exposes a lot of the games that are being played on that particular tip specifically. Also, on the second part of the show, we're going to deal with a concept of emancipation or slavery for all when we look at the American Civil War or American Revolution, letting the proclamation emancipation at the time, letting the blacks go, that's what that was about, or was it really a buy-in for slavery? And if you would like to ask any questions or share some information on this topic, please call 866-510-9025. Also, we ask that you would go to and join us on our social media talk that we have, where people come together and express information and share information and exchange ideas. It's the BTR community. It's a platform to where, the door is open to bring knowledge and information, have good, lively discussions with brothers and sisters who definitely want to hear it without being data mined. So join that for $24 per year, and that will be a great way to support the station, enable the station to continue to grow its platform. What's going on, Brother Rio?
Not much, brother. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well. Coming in clear, brother.
All right. I'm having some technical difficulties with my computer right now, so I'm trying to get that up and running. Okay. So I had to call in, but I'm here and ready to give out some positive vibration. I don't know about for other people, but this weekend was a little challenging for me. So I'm ready to get on some positive vibes and uplift the atmosphere. What about you, brother? How you doing today?
Oh man, doing really well. Same thing. I'm with you, ready to bring another a good show. For the people, and not only that, get some good vibrations coming back from the audience. And be able to go from there. And plus, also, I feel, really good about what we're going to be able to bring this evening. I think that, especially when you're dealing with AIDS and Ebola, it's not as if, especially after what recently happened here over in Africa, it's not like a lot of people, ain't, lifted up the veil and said, hey, peep it a little bit more and see what's going on. But we're going to try to, expose and add on a little more information to, and hopefully that they'll bring some more information to the table as well.
Oh, most definitely. Is there any articles you wanted to go over? I don't have my computer's still not up yet, so I don't have anything to bring to the people right now. But is there anything that caught your eye over the weekend, or anything that you can kind of remember?
Well, yeah, there is one particular article. Well, more than one. There was two articles that I want to share, but one particular article that I wanted to bring up. It's just another example of Europeans constantly excluding and pushing blacks out of lucrative opportunities, or out of opportunities to where they can generate heavy wealth or whatever. That always excluding. And when I was reading this article, it just really made me think about it. Like, man, they always coming up with something to make sure that we're not participating. So the article is called California Weed Entrepreneurs Will Make $5.2 billion in 2018. So, and I was reading and I was just read that article caught me because I've had different conversations with different people, you know, about the marijuana industry and also how the industry is growing. So, you know, and from what I can gather, most people I know who have thought about the industry, who have tried to make entry into the industry, who tried to get in on, you know what I'm saying, the big boom, aren't able to. And here, this is a $5.2 billion industry, you know what I'm saying, for cannabis, just in California. And you have, you know, a situation where they have incarcerated and destroyed and broken many black families over the distribution of marijuana, and, you know what I'm saying, and here they legalize it, exclude you, the same very person that they've been incarcerating and putting criminal records on because of this particular industry. And now this industry is generating $5.2 billion, and black folk is probably pretty much non-existent in terms of the amount of that share that they're getting.
Yes, sir. And, you know, in line with what you're saying, the people who were convicted while, you know, the substance was, you know, under Schedule A and controlled, they still are holding those people to their sentences. You know, you're not seeing a greater number of people getting out. You know, I don't think they've officially dropped or degraded the you know, the selling of marijuana into, you know, a different classification to where these people get a lesser sentence, or, you know, hey, you didn't serve your time, you know, go ahead and come out, or things of that nature. So, you know, yeah, I feel what you're saying, brother. You know, people are having limited access to, and they are making money, you know, hand over fist over, you know, things that they were previously incarcerating, you know, the vast of our community, where, again, they were making money hand over fist.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's just business as usual for them, whereas, you know, we're looking to pick up the pieces and, you know, restructure our life all over again. And we have to deal with the nuances of, you know, being labeled a criminal, you know, and all the many challenges that they have to overcome just from that particular label alone.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And they're doing it, or they think they're doing the rolling out of this marijuana under the guise, and thinking that a lot of brothers and sisters ain't picking up on it. Because if you notice, the places where they have of legalized marijuana and it is places that are not highly melanated states, you know, states where you have high European populations, because marijuana is a major tool for law enforcement to get into your car, into your house, you know, into your pockets, your backpack. So this is a tool in their arsenal that they want to make sure that it stings black people consistently. But here, they flip it on the other side and legalize it and turn it into a multi-billion-dollar industry, and don't allow you to participate in it. Locked you up for years, and even now, still making sure that the drug laws still are slanted against you, because states where they are highly melanated, we ain't doing no medical, bruh. Sorry. Recreational, definitely not doing no recreation, but we ain't even doing medical. This is too much of a tool in the arsenal of the system to make sure we get in your car when you driving, you know, and have different ways to do it. It's a tool, and and then they still using it while they're making millions of dollars off of it at the same time.
Right. And they're limiting the access of people who can actually get into the industry. So even though you may have never been convicted of a crime, you know, they still have criteria that will eliminate, you know, people who they want to, keep out of the system and getting a hold of this, lucrative money. They have tight criteria so that they can eliminate who they want to.
Yeah.
Of course, which happen to be, people who are highly melanated.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I know people who have, clean backgrounds and don't have, any complications, beyond, maybe some credit issues or, but they, clean that up, a few traffic tickets or what have you, but they still can't get a license to, to get into that industry. So, it's like, what do we have to do? We ain't never had no issues. We ain't been in trouble with the law, but we're still being refused a license.
Right.
So it's a very valid point.
So that's why I did that. Hold on. I think Brother Thomas may got something to say on this topic. Brother Thomas. Okay, all right. Thomas is just laying low. Okay, good. All right, he'll chime in. But yeah, and that's all I wanted to say. You know what I'm saying? That I just thought that was interesting. $5.2 billion, and they making sure brothers ain't getting a dime of it. You feel me?
Yes, sir. And and it's definitely by strategic design and plan.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Also, while you're talking about, another economic boom, I just wanted the people to know that I saw an article about Bitcoin today, saying that, Bitcoin is up to almost $10,000, so it's right at around 9,500. So
hold on, Mario, hold that point real fast. Scotty got to do something for technical reasons. Go ahead, but Scotty, we're gonna pause for a second. Go ahead, Scotty. Okay, all right. We back, Brother Rio. Appreciate you, Scotty. Go ahead, Brother Rio. Jump right back on where you was at.
I was just letting the people know that the Bitcoin industry is still positioning itself to rocket off. It's exceeding expectations right now. It was predicted to go up to 10,000 maybe by the end of December, early January, but it's almost at 10,000, and we're just starting to get. Well, we haven't even hit December yet. So this is a good opportunity. I believe that we can take advantage of, or the family can take advantage of to change our position and possibly do some things with with the money, pull it together and start some resources, as well as fund particular industries, because the industry is changing, and there's going to be opportunities that come along to support this new cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin is not the end all to be all, but it can lead into other avenues that we know are going to have to come about in order to support this cryptocurrency that they're trying to build on a global market. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to get together, get some money, and be able to pool into some things that we know they're going to push, and it's going to be, fruitful. Yeah, because
it's true. Bitcoin is definitely going up. I looked at it today. I was like, wow. I think it was up $965. Just in the last day or two.
Right, and this is something that we can get into. We shouldn't wait until the price margin is too high for the majority of the people to get in. Mm-hmm. So just food for thought.
Understood. I feel you. Yeah. Okay. And then before we get into moving towards our topic, Brother Rio, there's one more article that I wanted to share, and it really caught my eye because it was about the Atlanta area, and it's a article that was on the New York. I caught on the New York Times, and it's called "Please God, Don't Let Me Get Stopped Around Atlanta." It's called "No Sanctuary for Immigrants," and what it's talking about is Not many notice when the SUVs arrive. Around 5 a.m., when the immigration agents pull into the parking lot of the Chamblee Heights apartment, 16 miles from downtown Atlanta, only one person is on the lookout. Christina Monterose catches sight of the cars with the telltale tinted windows from her small apartment near the front, where she runs a daycare, and calls her downstairs neighbors. ICE is here. The neighborhood dials another, who passes it on. It takes less than 15 minutes for everyone in the complex to hear about La Migra, whereupon they shut their doors and hold their breath. Some show up late to work, and others skip it altogether. The school bus might leave some children behind. It just helps us. It's just us helping each other out, said Montoras. There's fear every day. Few places in the United States have simultaneously beckoned undocumented immigrants and personalized them for coming like metropolitan Atlanta, a boomtown of construction and service jobs where conservative politics and new national policies have turned every waking day into a gamble. President Trump has declared anyone living in the country illegally a target for arrest and deportation, driving up the number of immigration arrests by more than 40% this year. While the Obama administration deported record numbers of undocumented immigrants, it directed federal agents to focus on arresting serious criminals and recent arrivals. The current administration has erased both guidelines, allowing immigration and customs enforcement agents to arrest and deport anyone here illegally. So, freed of constraints, the regional ICE office in Atlanta made nearly 80% more arrests in the first half of this year than it did in the same period last year, the largest increase of any field office in the country. It has had help. Local sheriffs and the police have been working with federal agents to identify and detain immigrants, a model of cooperation that the Trump administration is rapidly trying to expand throughout the country. Every few hours, an unauthorized immigrant is booked into a county jail on charges as serious as assault and as minor as failing to signal a right turn. Then the jail alerts ICE. Contrary to what happens in the so-called sanctuary cities repeatedly denounced by Mr. Trump, where local authorities refuse to turn immigrants over to the federal agency except in cases involving the gravest crimes. Atlanta immigrants do little but hide. At strip mall taquerias and fruit stands, businesses have lagged. Word of the arrest flowed through neighborhood phone trees, and Facebook has become an early warning system for people desperate for clues about where ICE is operating. All around the metropolitan area, cabs and Uber cars are picking up immigrants who know driving their own cars may get them no further than detention. Yeah, Rhea, I'm not going to go no further, but I just want to get your opinion, man. Why you think they, what's the reason behind, this increase and they shaking the Mexicans down on such a heavy level? What you putting on that, Rio?
Well, I think it always, boils down to money, and control, of course. But, I think there's probably some underlying agendas. We know that, the Hispanic population is heavy into, the lower end services, manual labor, and they may be trying to free up some slots for other persuasions that are struggling, that may need some some work out there during these troubling economic times. So, or they might just be tired of beating up on black folk all the time, so they just trying to share the wealth.
Okay, what?
What'd you say?
Tired of beating up on black folk?
Yeah, they just trying to spread the love around.
Put a foot up everybody's butt, huh? spread that food out a little bit, huh?
Just spread it out, We ain't okay. Y'all accuse us of playing favorites. Okay, well, let's start in on the next one.
Basically, they basically are always implementing and looking for a means of control and how to continue to further that system of control. That's what we're dealing with. It appears to me at all times, brother.
I agree. But why is it seems like they're isolating, to the bigger center? It may be just another case of, further gentrification. You know, the Hispanics may be in a location to where they're looking to take that area over. So those places are being more heavily policed, you know, in order to make those people scatter, or, you know, we're going to make money on you one way or other.
Yeah, yeah. And we definitely want bodies. And so sending more and more people into the like Brother Scotty says, it ain't the prison industrial complex, it's slavery. You know, so I was going to say the prison industrial complex, but sending more and more people into slavery and, you know, in bodies into slavery, you know, right now this push towards Mexican is another way to fulfill that you know, that unquenchable thirst to trap bodies and energy as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like you said, it's all about, you know, control. They're going to create a new narrative, and you know, you kind of see the propaganda on TV. I don't know if this is a nationwide commercial, but you know, they have the I believe he's a Mexican, but you know, he's working in Mexico doing some tough, physical, hard, you know, hands-on labor. And, you know, the way that they depict it is, you know, his hair is all disheveled, and, you know, he's got grime and grit all over his body, and, you know, his face is contorted, you know, to emphasize that, you know, he's working hard, and this is hard work, you know. But then throughout the commercial, they kind of show his rise up into, quote-unquote, the American dream, you know, climbing up the social ladder and the corporate ladder, you know. So he makes it to America, you know, he's got an opportunity to, you know, to get a low-end job, and he's got to ride a bike to work, but, you know, he's got a flat on the side of the road, and so people drive by in the car, and they're making fun of him. He had a nice bike, dude, you know. And then by the end of the commercial, you know, he's gotten into college, and, you know, he's made a career out of, you know, the medical field, and, you know, they show him with, you know, he's crisp, he's clean, and, you know, he's in charge, and, you know, telling people what to do, and, you know, he's just living the good life. So, you know, it seems like they just want to sell the same old narrative to, you know, a different population.
Yes, sir. I agree.
I don't know if you're familiar with that commercial or not, brother, but, you know, in a nutshell, that's kind of, you know, what I see of it. Just, you know, the American dream, you know, rehashed and being sold to, you know, another particular group of people.
Okay. I feel you. But what I was going to do, Brother Rio, let's go ahead and move into the first part of the show, brother. About AIDS and Ebola and the game that they playing. And we got some information we're going to share with you out of a book called Emerging Viruses, AIDS and Ebola, Nature, Accident, or Intentional. So what we're going to do is first play this video, and it's going to bring what we think is just some good introductory information, and then we're going to bring some information out of this book and see what we can get from it. What you think, Brother Rio?
That sounds good to me. Let's go ahead and set this thing on up.
All right, here we go.
Information in this article. We'll read through some of this. Secret project created weaponized Ebola in South Africa in the 1980s. No records are available to confirm that the biological agents were destroyed. Operating out of South Africa during the apartheid era in the early 1980s, Dr. Wouter Bassoon launched a secret bioweapons project called Project Coast. The goal of the project was to develop biological and chemical agents that would either kill or sterilize the black population and assassinate political enemies. Among the agents developed were Marburg, and Ebola viruses. Bassoon is surrounded by a cloak and dagger intrigue, as he told Pretoria High Court in South Africa that the local CIA agent in Pretoria threatened me with death on the sidewalk of the American Embassy and Showman Street. According to a 2001 article in the New Yorker magazine, the American embassy in Pretoria was terribly concerned that Bassoon would reveal deep connections between Project Coast and the United States. In 2013, Bassoon was found guilty of unprofessional conduct by the South African Health Council. Here's where it gets interesting. Bioweapons expert Jeanne Gulliman writes in her book Biological Weapons: From the Invention of State-Sponsored Programs to Contemporary Bioterrorism. The project's growth years were from 1982 to 1987, when it developed a range of biological agents such as those for anthrax, cholera, and the Marburg and Ebola viruses, and for the botulinum toxin. Bassoon's bioweapons program officially ended in 1994, but there has been no independent verification that the pathogens created were ever destroyed. The order to destroy them went directly to Bassoon. According to the Wall Street Journal, the integrity of the process rested solely on Dr. Bassoon's honesty. Bassoon claims to have had contact with Western agencies that provided ideological assistance to Project Coast. Bassoon stated in an interview shot for the documentary Anthrax War that he met several times with Dr. David Kelly, the infamous UN's weapons inspector in Iraq. Kelly was a top bioweapons expert in the United Kingdom. He was found dead near his home in Oxfordshire in 2003. While the official story claims he committed suicide, medical experts highly doubt this story. Dr. Timothy Stamps, Minister of Health of Zimbabwe, suspected that his country was under biological attack during the time that Bassoon was operating. Stamps told PBS Frontline in 1998 that the evidence is very clear that these were not natural events. Whether they were caused by some direct or deliberate inoculation or not is the question we have to answer. Stamps specifically named the Ebola and Marburg viruses as suspect. Stamps thinks that his country was being used as a testing ground for weaponized Ebola. I'm talking about anthrax and cholera in particular, but also a couple of viruses that are not endemic to Zimbabwe, such as the Ebola-type virus and, we think also, the Marburg virus. We wonder whether, in fact, these are not associated with biological warfare against this country during the hostilities. Ebola was along the line of the Zambezi River, and I suspect that this may have been an experiment to see if a new virus could be used to directly infect people. The Ghanaian Times reported in early September on the recent Ebola outbreak, noting connections between Bassoon and bioweapons research. The article points out that there are two types of scientists in the world: those who are so concerned about the pain and death caused to humans by illness that they will even sacrifice their own lives to try and cure deadly diseases, and those who will use their scientific skill to kill humans on the orders of government. This information gives us an interesting perspective on the recent unprecedented Ebola outbreak. Is it an organic natural phenomenon? Did the strain of Ebola accidentally escape from a bioweapons lab, or was it deliberately released? The fear-mongering going on from mainstream media on our televisions and internet feeds and newspapers every day is nothing but scare tactics and fear-mongering, because fear sells articles and newspapers and magazines. The Ebola outbreak in Africa is real, but the number of deaths compared to other diseases or accidents are significantly lower. I have no doubt that government agencies, alphabet agencies, under a cloak of secrecy, have created weaponized Ebola. And without a doubt, they do have an antidote for the Ebola. Hence, the Dr. Kent Brantley and Nurse Nancy Wrightbowl were so easily cured from that particular strain of Ebola. And we were told that there was only just a couple of doses of the Z-MAP drug, the magic drug that cured them up completely in just a matter of a couple of weeks. This has been Unraveling the Matrix. Hit like, share this video, and subscribe to this channel.
What you think, Brother Rio? Brother Rio? Oh, okay, you're on mute. Hold on. Brother Rio.
Oh.
Okay, you muted. You was mute.
Yeah, can I?
Yeah, you could be heard.
Oh, okay. I was just saying that, I think that's a powerful video. And, one of the highlights that I take from it is that, sometimes things are created and, even if the creator is intending for the research and the technology and the information gathered from that research to be used for, the human population in a beneficial way, usually the people who are in control or funding the very investigation have alternate agendas, and those agendas may be conflicting. But at that point, the genie's already out of the bottle, and people who don't want to go along with the program start popping up deceased. And I think it's foul, brother. I really think that it's foul. And, what we are witnessing is, the evolution of genetic manipulation as well as germ warfare, because we know that when they came over to the country, a lot of our, ancestors on this continent were, exterminated through the very diseases that the Europeans brought over with them. They'd had no resistance built up to these types of plagues that they were having over in Europe, like the bubonic plague and things of that nature. Right. So that within itself decimated the population over here in the Americas and made it much easier for them to conquer. So I think they're just trying to evolve that particular strategy, and they want to create a weapon that they can turn on certain genetic markers so that it would target certain people but leave them immune to be able to further their agenda. And so I think we're just witnessing the evolution of that same particular kind of plan. What are your thoughts, brother?
Same as yours. I think when you look at the mindset of someone who is willing to create a weapon of this type, who it just really shows the lack of respect for the creator itself, because creation is what gives life and allows people to share, entities to share in that light, and it is what gives light and distinguishes it and extinguishes it. And to be able to see that they just have no respect for life, they'll just to create the sinister aspect of creating something like this. I believe, like Brother Roz says, just psychopathic. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So let me go in a little deeper, Brother Rio, and add to what they were saying on this, because it's just so sinister when you really start looking at the mindset, and that's why, I can see why people refer to them as devils, because I definitely don't believe in the concept of the devil, but I definitely would go with evil personified. But it just really it just really lets you know why people see them this way. So let me get this. Okay, so this is the book Emerging Viruses, AIDS and Ebola, by Dr. Leonard G. Horowitz. And I'm going to read a little excerpt out of it called Manufacturing AIDS-Like Viruses. And what it is, it's a interview. Okay. It's an interview between Robert, who is this doctor, and Lynn. So I'm going to start off with Lynn. So it says, Lynn's going to say, okay, now let's get a little bit more specific about the virus itself. With regards to the AIDS virus, had it been specifically, this is what he's asking him, has it been specifically manufactured? What might have been the first steps? And what do you think the researchers began with? This is what the doctor's saying. Well, I think they began with bovine Vishna virus, which they knew was a T-cell destroyer. And they made that by crossing bovine and Vishna viruses in cattle. Now, let me throw this out here. Bovine, we are dealing with cattle, and Vishna, we are dealing with sheep. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So he said that they made this T cell, which is a destroyer, by crossing bovine and Vishnu viruses in cattle. Vishna is the virus in sheep. Its characteristics is a destroyer, and they wanted a T cell destroyer. So they took a T cell attacker, the bovine leukemia virus, and crossed it with a Vishna to make a T cell destroyer, which is exactly what they got. But then all they had was a T cell destroyer in cattle, which wasn't very good for humans. So then they grew it in human tissue. And when you do that, it adapts to human beings. And there are a host of ways to get these things to grow in tissue, even if the receptors won't take the virus. You feel that? You hear that, Rita?
So they have a way of forcing it into your genetics.
Yes. So they are taking this cattle virus and the sheep virus, crossbreeding them, and growing them in human tissue so that they now work on your genetic structure.
Understood. So now it basically has a way to infiltrate on a cellular level the individual cells, and in particular, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but the T cells are directly responsible for activating your immune system because it identifies what is and what is not foreign, correct? Or needs to be attacked because, this isn't good for the body.
Understood. You on point there.
Okay.
Okay, now let me continue on, Brother Real. But come on, Real, ain't that sinister? What?
It's very sinister. And I'm puzzled as to into thinking, what is their rationale in believing, and I do mean believing that this is not going to affect them in any way. Like, this can possibly be contained within a particular population, and there's going to be no spreading, into or outside of, the intended targets. Or are they considering them as well as just collateral damage? Yeah. Collateral and unacceptable losses?
Yes, I think that's the case.
Evil.
Yes, it is. Let me go on. Okay, now Lynn's going to ask another question. He said, they could have delivered the viral RNA a number of ways, correct? Then the doctor says, yes. One of the ways is by a pseudovirus formation. Pseudovirus formation is where you put in a simultaneous mixture of cells and viruses. And what happens is, for instance, if you put bovine and Vishna viruses in with herpes virus, in the packaging process, you'll get BVV genome inside a herpes coat and vice versa. So you follow me there, Rio?
I do.
Yeah, so they're creating pseudovirus formations where they're mixing viruses, and they're mixing the Vishna and the cow virus now with herpes, bruh. And now you got this herpes concoction where you have the genome is inside a herpes coating. So you have herpes on the outside and the herpes in the Vishnu and cattle I mean, in bovine on the inside, and you have that same cell vice versa, where you have herpes on the inside coated with a Vishnu in bovine virus.
And there is no question that the herpes virus knows how to interact with human cells.
No question.
Because herpes is very common.
Yeah. And so right here, let me finish this. So then you separate out all the herpes ones, and it just infects any cell which are sensitive to herpes. And you can artificially introduce BVV into a herpes sensitive cell because it has BVV on the inside and herpes on the outside.
That's heavy, brother.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we're talking about some serious technology, research, and study. I mean, that's serious, brother.
And it says right here, Brother Rio, another way is to treat them with heat, and they open up. Or you can use some detergents that will open them up. Or there's a host of different things. Even some viruses will tend to open them up. It makes the cells permeable, even though they normally wouldn't be. So you can introduce the one you want to get in, even though there's no real receptor for it. They're pushing past your natural receptors, even though, you know, the rejection process that's natural, past that.
As well as I can see them, by what you're saying, them being able to use detergents and different things to activate them, you know, again, that could be a purpose or work in conjunction with, you know, genetically modifying the food.
Yeah.
Or, as the clip was saying, you know, poisoning the water supply. So, okay, I mean, if you're introducing things like that, then I can see them, basically compartmentalizing, a concoction of poison. So they give a particular segment of the population part of the poison. And then they implement another part of the poison through the food and another part of the poison through the water. And as long as the unintended population aren't engaging in those, let's just say those three examples, in any of those particular habits, then they have a dramatically less likeliness of contracting the disease.
That's correct.
Wow. And that is heavy, bro. That is heavy.
They're
because,
foul.
You know, I was listening. I'm sorry, brother. Go ahead.
No, I said they're foul. I'm listening to you. Go ahead, my brother.
Right. Okay. Well, I was listening to Brother Umar Johnson, and he was, you know, he was kicking on, you know, the AIDS and Ebola and whether it was manufactured or not. And he made reference to the Global Report, which is a presidential report, the Global Report of 2000. So if the people Google that, you know, you're going to find the, it's called, you know, just the report to the president, Global 2000. And the forward is by Jimmy Carter. And, you know, I briefly read over the introduction, and, you know, Jimmy Carter, he's talking about, you know, the agenda of getting into different third world countries or different various highly melanated places throughout the world, and, you know, forming alliances with the upper echelon political forces and enacting basically what we would call now, today, Agenda 21 protocol, which is pretty much taking over the resources. So they're going to teach them how to grow food using modern tradition or technology. So, for example, like in Africa, you know, they would plant crops and then they would slash and then they would burn the fields because ashes are very nutritious and they help re-energize the soil. And they will move on to another section and farm that, giving that area a place to rest and regain its nutrients. And, you know, they will come back to it in another rotation of, you know, a certain amount of years so that the crops that they were growing were always, you know, healthy and nutritious and full of nutrients, minerals and vitamins and antioxidants and the things that help you stay healthy and fight off these infectious diseases.
Mm-hmm.
But, they came in and they showed them different techniques of being able to plant using the same spot, which they claim is going to help with deforestation. But they also introduced to them foreign pesticides and fertilizers for the sake of revitalizing the soil, which of course they're making a profit on because they're making them in factories, but it also helps with an agenda of, placing maybe one particular component into the ground and into the food so that when it interacts with something that they're giving them, because they're also coming with the vaccinations, especially for the kids, and it's just a devious plan, man. And I can see it all just falling together from the information that they are giving is just compartmentalized. And if you don't put together the pieces, then, it just seems like philanthropy. But, it really speaks to what I believe, is a greater conspiracy against the melanated people of the globe, boiling down to just population control, brother.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
In a nutshell.
I agree with you. I feel you. Yeah. Okay. I feel you. Let me continue on with this interview. I think it's going to continue to give out some really good information. Also, it says, okay, the guy's asking him another question. He says, okay, so it could have been bovine Vishna virus, which is BVV, but also there was some speculation it could have been Scrappy, another sheep virus, right? That's the question he asked. And Robert says, yeah, well, Scrappy's a little bit different than Vishna, but basically I don't think Scrappy's a retrovirus. It's like it, but it's not the culprit. Now listen, really he just exposed that, there's another virus out there,
right.
And he's saying, yeah, it's similar to that, but it tells you how they really out here in this stuff, right? And then Lynn asks another question. During our first conversation, you also mentioned, like other researchers, you could actually take a look at the AIDS virus, and it looks like it's been spliced in particular regions. Now, here's the doctor. Oh, yes. Actually, looking at it was one of the first things that told us what it was, because BVV and AIDS, of course, look identical, and there weren't that many D-type retroviruses. There were only a few. The D-type are cylindrical-shaped retroviruses, which, of course, BVV and AIDS are identical. Besides the fact that they were both magnesium-dependent and were T-cell attackers that would produce Synctium and could wipe out cells. And then what you do is look at the genome. Actually, a paper by Gallo published in Science, I think about 83 or 86, said he took the restriction endonucleases, which are scissor-like enzymes, and treated the virus and showed that when the virus falls apart, that where it falls apart are exactly at the gene lines. In other words, it manages to fall apart just at the places where they could have constructed it. What you think on that one?
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, where you stitching something up, that's where it's going to be the weakest.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just, first time I've encountered that kind of information right there, brother.
And then he says, the other dude said, is that right? Just where the foreign pieces might have come together? The doctor says, yes. It falls apart in 10 or 12 places because those endonucleases cut at specific points. But what's interesting is if it occurred spontaneously in nature, why would it fall apart exactly where the genes occurred? The gag, the pole, the envelope, the tat genes. That's the question. Everything sort of cuts apart just the way you would put it together if you were constructing it. This we thought was the strongest piece of evidence that would have said they actually put it together entirely in a lab. And then the guy asks another question, and how might we have done that? Let's say they started with BVV. The doctor says, well, in this case, if you start with BVV, you just manipulate it to grow it in human tissue to adapt it to humans. if you started with the BLV and Vishna virus, you would take the viruses, cut them up with enzymes, then chromatograph them so that they're homologous. That is, the 10 different parts are separate. Then you take each different part that you want uniquely and put it together with other parts and zip them up. And how do you zip them up? The guy asked, or combine them. They have enzymes that sew them back up just like they've got ones which cut them apart. These are repair enzymes. Then the guy asked another question. Then they separate those particular viruses and they put them into cells. They put them into serum. Add your enzymes and your other parts and wait for a while. And then throw everything into a culture and see what happens.
Wow. That's just exactly what we explained.
Ain't it?
You know, and we're looking at different methodologies of getting these different viruses or components of viruses to manifest within a particular kind of population.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they're working on perfecting this.
Yeah. I mean, they know how to build a virus all the way up, put parts of it together, and have enzymes that repair them. I mean, and understand how enzymes can repair and build up cells and tear them down.
Right. Right. And learning how to manipulate those inside and outside of the body.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So if you have a particular portion of the population who does manage to contract, you know, these viruses, they just come on in. You know, we got what you need that'll hook you right up. They give them, you know, some of those enzymes that are going to just dissipate the virus so that it's not active anymore. And voila, you know, and that sounds like, you remember when Africa was having that Ebola scare, and they flew over a couple of people, you know, of the Caucasian persuasion who were so-called, you know, afflicted with the Ebola virus. Mm-hmm. And they came back to America and they got cured.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's wondering, well, okay, how come you ain't sending that over there to help them people out over, you know what I'm saying? It's just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean,
same old game.
Yes.
And
but I also like to say that, you know, I think, you know, you could tell that they're working outside of Mother Nature because Mother Nature is counteracting everything that they're trying to do.
Well, hold on. You just made an interesting
Yes,
point because he deals with nature right here on the very next part of it. Because he says he says where it says you put it into a culture and see what happens. And then he says I was still a bit fuzzy. And then Robert said, but you see that's work. You don't have to do that. Nature does it all for you. All you do is take a cow and simultaneously inject bovine into one hip and Vishna into the other. And the cow is your mixer. And it will do it for you automatically. Because what happens is the viruses are so unstable that they will recombine and produce every thermodynamically stable recombinant possible.
Okay. So they don't even need a laboratory.
The cow will do it itself.
Right.
And then it says interesting.
But they still have to, if I'm not incorrect, they still have to manipulate it into a herpes virus so that it will interact with the human host.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They have to put it in that human tissue because that's why a lot of people make the statement that, you know, there's certain viruses that you can inject into humans, you know, that could be deadly in an animal population, but you can inject it to a human, it wouldn't do anything to him at all.
So, Brother Tommy, let me ask you a question.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember, not too long ago, a few years back, this mad cow disease, when that was all the rave? Do you remember that when they were talking about, you know, mad cow disease and all these cows were infected and, you know, they were twitching and having all kind of symptoms and, you know, these cows were still being butchered and sold to the open market. And, you know, then you had people who started exhibiting these same kind of symptoms. And, they try to blame it on, okay, we're going to recall the meat because apparently you got some tainted meat. And, we feel that it's the mad cow disease. What in the world is the mad cow disease? So, I mean, it sounds like propaganda to cover up some things that, may have come, into the light of some people, and they had to put out a backstory, because people are noticing, hey man, them cows, they ain't looking right.
Heck no, and shoot, they probably was injecting them with something.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. They was injecting them with something. Let me finish off this interview real fast, Brother Rio. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and then we're going to get into the second half of the show. But let me finish this, and then what he says basically. The guy at the end of the interview provided a little quote that I thought was pretty good. He said basically, what a lot of people who say that they don't have the ability to do these techniques, and he said that's bull. But of course, our answer is, well, the virus makes itself, so you don't even have to implicate them for the genetic viewpoint if you don't want to. And then he points out a unique common sense metaphor for the emergence of HIV. It's like saying that you got a baby with no arms and legs, and somebody dressed it up and took it to a party in Beverly Hills. Well, it sure couldn't do that and get there by itself. So that's what he's saying. Hey, you got a lady with no legs and no feet, and she had a party in Beverly Hills. How'd she get there?
Right.
So he's letting you know that you have these viruses that are out here jumping around, that are affecting lives, killing, taking lives. And they did not get here by happenstance. What I wanted to reiterate to the people is we have to understand you're looking at a bovine leukemia virus being mixed with a sheep Vishna virus. And those viruses being crossbred and grown in human tissue, and more specifically, herpes. You feeling me?
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So and then it says, this doctor theorized that bioweapons researchers began by mixing these viruses, which they knew would attack the T cells. Now tell me why they want, tell them one more time, Brother Rio, why they would want something that would attack T cells.
Well, it's my understanding that it is the T cells that are responsible for identifying alien pathogens. And setting markers upon them for them to be eradicated by the body, by the immune system. So they kind of mark them for consumption. There was a movie that was back with Steven Seagal, and it was called, Marked for Death. So, that's what these T cells, their main responsibility is to go by and mark foreign matter in the body as foreign, so that the body can, in fact, go ahead and attack and eliminate that. So if you eliminate the identifiers, then you're free to infiltrate, and you can go move forward with your agenda unmolested.
Yes, sir.
So you attack the attackers.
Yes, sir. And then what they were saying, that they wanted a T cell attacker, and they were and so they knew that sheep viruses were known as T cell destroyers. And also that then they said next, in order to get these viruses to cross the species barrier and infect human cells, the doctor reported that researchers may have cultured them with herpes viruses or human white blood cells. And then the viruses were thus repackaged. Herpes virus in envelopes, for instance, then contained genes for BVV, which could have easily created a virus that did everything the AIDS virus did. So, party people, now you know where we come from. Brother Rio, any quick words before we go to a quick station identification break and we come back on the other side?
I got two questions. I don't know how long we want to remain on this topic, but I got two things, but we can deal with that on the other side of the break, brother.
Okay. All right. Everyone, you listen to the Melanated Roots radio show. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
High energy, full with the wisdom, sense of a rich man, knowledge in the rhythm. This is what I'm using to come up with a style, so I'll interact altogether better with the crowd. Nervous for a second and the record starts spinning and I fall into the state of mind of what I've just created. Pumping like the doctor, D into the RE suckers ready to leap up on the tip when we made it. Created so I'll never be regarded as a regular, more than just a little bit better than my competitor. You should never underestimate the fashion. I hope for the stage whether I'm cooling or thrashing. Cracking the concoction created by me when read you read. E equals the D-O to the C. Knowledge and the talent that my mother had born. Now her equals an artist I won't be born. What is that, Dre?
The views and opinions
the
expressed
formula.
by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Melanated Roots radio show. And we're going to go ahead and continue along the lines in which we've been speaking on. Brother Rio, you said you had one more topic or point that you wanted to speak on this particular topic before we
hold
move
on.
on.
Go ahead. Hold on, brother. Did you put that little ensemble together right there?
Yes, sir.
Well, that was very on point, sir. Yeah. You know, Dr. Dre, what's the formula? Yeah. You know, I just thought that was very fitting for the topic that we're talking about for today.
Yeah.
You know, so big ups to you, man. Big ups to you.
Yes, sir.
But in light of the information that you just shared, brother, especially with how foreign viruses interact within the human body, would it be safe to theorize that you can't get a particular kind of virus just from, well, I don't know. Let me just put this out to the family. Can you get a particular kind of virus from being attacked by a rabid animal or, you know, or a vicious animal that just has that is a carrier of a particular kind of virus?
Well, what is rabies?
Such as, and that's why I'm asking. Rabies, even back in, you know, the Middle Ages, when the Europeans were going through, you know, the bubonic, all those different kind of plagues, and they were attributing them to, you know, infestation of cockroaches and diseased rats and things of that nature, you know. But with the information that you're just giving out right now, it seems like it has to have some kind of agent that is going to interact or knows how to interact with the human cell. So, right. You know, there seems to be more to it than just coming in contact with an animal outside of your species that may have a virus or suffering from some kind of sickness.
Right.
I just want to know your thoughts on that. I ain't asking you to be able to answer that, brother. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that and kind of put it out to the people. And, you know, it's just...
No. You're making a good point because, like you said, if you come in contact with an animal out in the wild that has rabies and you get bit by him, you can contract rabies. And there was no special a medium of where that animal had to put into a human tissue first before it could be transferred over to you. Is that what I'm getting? What you're saying?
Right. Unless that animal is close enough to the human genome for that virus to mutate or be able to adapt and kind of conquer some cells that are susceptible to it on its own.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's a very good question.
Or how long have they been doing this?
Right.
And my second point, brother, was, you know, and I wanted to contrast the example that I just gave to you, in opposed to viruses that we know are man-made, because the ones that are man-made, it seems like Mother Nature.
Brother Rio, you there? Okay, brother. Okay, everybody. I think Brother Rio, can you hear me? Okay, we're having a little technical difficulty right in the middle of when Brother Rio was bringing some fire. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue on. Well, not really continue on because we've already gotten to a point where we had pretty much brought what we needed to bring about the viruses and where AIDS and Ebola is coming from. So, I feel like we definitely talked about what we wanted to talk about there. So, I'm gonna go ahead and set that to the side while Brother Rio figure out what's going on with him, and then we'll pull him back in once he's able to rejoin the conversation. So, what we were gonna do, we were gonna naturally move over to the topic of emancipation or slavery for all. Brother Rio, go ahead and call back in. I think that's what the issue is. You're going to have to call back in, Brother Rio. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to get into this information where it says emancipation or slavery for all, because what we're talking about is at the time of the American the Civil War, you're dealing with this Emancipation Proclamation. Brother Rio, I see you.
My apologies my apologies, man. My computer dropped my connection again. So let's just go ahead and move on because I don't know how much of that the family called or you called.
No.
I'm just looking up and seeing that the connection was dropped. So it's just like, oh man, I don't.
Yeah, but Rio,
and didn't even notice.
But Rio, you really good. If you remember where you was at, you was on your second question, your second part where we were talking about an animal in the wild being able to infect a human being without there being, that human tissue aspect of it. And only a very little bit after that did you leave off on. So if you want to finish your point, you got the space.
Well, briefly and in a nutshell, I was just trying to contrast that with man-made viruses or things that, we are pretty much sure that they have manifested within a laboratory, and how even when they affect a general given melanated population, we have the ability to overcome that particular kind of strand in, sometimes one generation, one or two generations, to where that particular strand is, I don't want to say we're immune to it, but let's just say we're highly resistant to it. So it doesn't have the same effect, and it doesn't quail the population as strongly as, it did into the original host.
Understood.
So, we're witnessing an overcoming or an adaptation, or if you want to call it evolution or what have you, against these germ warfares that they are attempting to infiltrate onto a people, to a point to where our population growth is still, outpacing their negative rate at this particular time. So I think that, again, contrasting it with the point that I brought before, I think that may be one degree that we may be able to ascertain, if something is coming out of nature or if something is predominantly man-made. Does that make any sense to you, brother?
A whole lot of sense. I see exactly where you're coming from, brother. And okay. I would like to know that as well. The rabies bite that a human could get, that makes you wonder how is that occurring? You're making a point. Right. When it's naturally done, or when can that occur, or when it's man-made, that's when you have to have all the, the extra things involved at that point. But you feel me? But I'm with you.
I do. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we can go ahead and move on. But one last thing is it does call into question what the symptoms are and how they are terming these symptoms, because a person could be bit over in England, and they call it rabies, and a person could be bit over here in America, and they exhibit the same symptoms, but depending on the agenda, they may call it the same thing or they may call it something completely different for either the sake of selling or maximizing the selling of different types of drugs or, experiments or just keeping people in the dark. So I think that's something that we have to look into as well. If we're going to call ourselves being self-determining, we're going to have to put in place things to decipher without question within our own community how we're going to identify these things so that we're just not told anything and we can empower ourselves to, actually come up with quote-unquote cures or how to rebalance the body.
Understood. Yes, sir. Okay, Brother Rio.
Yes, sir. Let's go because this next one is hot and heavy. So
yes, it is. Yes, it is. And like I said, it's a concept of emancipation or slavery for all. So, Rio, I'm gonna get into some little reading and chime in as you see fit. You feel me, brother?
Okay. Yeah, let's go.
Okay, the American Civil War was not fought to emancipate the slaves. Shoot, you tell most brothers that they ain't try to hear that. But the American Civil War was not fought to emancipate the slaves, but to defeat state sovereignty over the federal government. South Carolina seceded from the Union in December 1860, signaling the onset of the Civil War. The contention of many Southern legislators was the states retained full sovereign rights as co-signers of the Constitution, including the right to secede from the Union. President Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated in March 1861. Another proposed 13th Amendment was signed by President Lincoln in 1861, but only one state had ratified it before the outbreak of the Civil War. Lincoln had signed a resolve that would have permitted slavery and upheld states' rights. What you think of that, Brother Rio? Because they're sitting here telling you the reverse, that he was signing, get people slaves off, Honest Abe, he's saying right here that he had already signed a resolve that would have permitted slavery and upheld state rights. Tell me how you're feeling on that one.
Well, I think later on we're going to go over some information that kind of highlights Lincoln's thinking about the situation. So at this particular point, all I want the people to be able to gather from, what you just read is that pretty much there's already a civil war. We have factions that are warring within the legislative Congress or whatever you want to call them at that particular time as to, who's going to be in control and who's going to be in power. Is it going to be the side that, from the North perspective, we got to get rid of the slavery thing because, that's going to give them all the power. They got free labor and, they just reaping 100% profit. Whereas, we're up here, we're trying at this particular time to become an industrialized, community. And, we got to build these factories. We have to, at least pay these workers, even if it's just, minimally it's something, but it's still a cost and an expenditure. The proposed 13th Amendment that he was alluding to that, of course, was not passed, reads like this. No amendment shall be made to the Constitution which will authorize or give to Congress the power to abolish or interfere within any state with the domestic institutions thereof, including that of persons held in labor or service by the laws of said state.
That's right.
So he was recognizing the sovereignty of the state to govern its own affairs, and if it wanted to institute or already had instituted the slavery, then they were not, as a federal government, they were not going to interfere with that.
Right.
Period. So, but as Brother Scotty said, it was written, but it was never passed. So, the Civil War was an attempt by European sovereign power structures to split the United States of America into two separate countries.
Yes, sir.
The North will be controlled through the banking interest of England, i.e. the Bank of England, and the South through the banking interest of France, i.e. the Bank of France. Both systems of banking were controlled ultimately by, guess who?
The Rothschilds. Yes, sir.
That they play on both sides, and they divide and conquer, putting the North versus the South, and you know, one power is going to be in control versus the other power, and those powers were working together.
Yes.
You know, to kind of orchestrate this.
Yes, they were.
The Tsar of Russia, who it was Alexander II, the Tsar of Russia literally saved the Union and prevented the actual invasion from Mexico of troops from England, France, and Spain to ensure that the division of the United States of America would not take place.
Mm-hmm.
Another fact that people may is that Lincoln, proclaimed his Emancipation Proclamation to so-called, free the slaves. Alexander II freed the serfs over in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So, that they kind of parallel each other. And, they were, in fact, at that particular point in time, they were allies.
Yes, sir.
Tsar Alexander II threatened war with each of those countries if they invaded the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that, brother?
That's heavy. I mean, they won't tell you about that. I mean, I think what you said about how the Rothschilds and the banking interests are paying both sides. If you go back to the show that we had, not the one on Haiti before, the last one, but the one before, when we were talking about how they split from the Catholic Church, then the Church of England, and split into secret societies, and we're playing on both sides of everything that has occurred ever since then, and this is another example of that.
I agree, brother.
Hey, Brother Rio, we do have Thomas on the board. I think he has a question, or unless you want to bring some more.
Brother Thomas, what you got to contribute, brother? Hope you're doing well.
Hope you guys are doing well. Good to hear from you guys.
Yes, sir. What's up, Brother Thomas?
Man, what you was just reading from, what book is that coming from?
The book we're reading about, the Emancipation or Slavery for All?
What you was just reading about the Tsar of Russia coming over and the invasion of the United States. Oh
yeah. It's a paper that I did some research on, and we pulled it out of an archive. No particular book.
Gotcha.
And also, Brother Thomas, I don't have there's a website that I got that information off of that was full of old congressional documents. I just wrote down the message. I forgot. I was in a rush. I didn't write down the actual website, but I'll try to get that information, and if I post it on the BTR network, or I'll have it by next Monday, because I know the family, may want to look that up, because that is not, because I know when I came across it, I was like, man, I ain't never heard this. So, me and Brother Tommy kind of cross-referenced, and, we seen it in a couple of different places. So it's like, okay, well, we need to bring this to the family.
Right.
So, well, we'll definitely get you some sources, brother.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because I heard that before, but everything was the same except for the invasion was coming from California.
Okay.
That was what I heard, but it was also just someone talking.
Well, remember at one time, California was a part of Mexico.
Oh, absolutely. It was part of New Spain. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and all of that. Sure. My interpretation on the Civil War is, when you come from having a way of doing business, where you have slaves and agriculture and things of that nature, they're implementing a new system of industrialization, and they're introducing this Wall Street system. There's no way that the British and France and all of the other countries, nation states rather, can do business with the United States if the United States has slave labor and they don't. So that was one of to create this Wall Street capitalism system, they had to give that up.
Yeah, that's heavy.
So, can you hear me? So they knew that. I wouldn't have trusted Lincoln either. I think that the southern states could see the writing on the wall. They looked at what was happening all around the world at the same time. The colonies, the French and Britain, they started releasing their slave colonies.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at around the time of 1864, 1865, I think Brazil became free around 1860. Around that same time, you'll see Jamaica, Trinidad. So it was a common thing going all around all these people, and they created their international criminal system of business out of that. Now to bring it up to modern day, I call that system internationalism, white internationalism. That's why it doesn't matter what country a white person comes from. Everybody white was Conor McGregor. Didn't matter if they were American. Didn't matter if they were German. You know, they go through an international thing that they do. And I see it right now. This is why I say we had a potential to have another civil war, because they're switching the system up again. It's getting away from that international system and going into something called globalization. And how much of the resources are these people willing to share with all the people that they've bamboozled all these years through treaties and trade agreements that think they're supposed to be getting the equal share now. And, of course, we know that these people are not going to give them the equal share.
Right.
So I think that we see the same thing happening all over again, just somewhat differently. I mute my line.
What you think, Bria?
I think those are powerful points. I think those are very valid. And I think that pretty much sets up where we're going, going from the 13th, the proposed 13th Amendment to the actual 13th and 14th Amendment, and how the so-called emancipation of the slaves, along with, Alexander II freeing of the serfs, and, just like Brother Thomas was saying, other colonies and different locations around the globe being so-called free from their oppressor. But I think looking back at it, we can recognize that it was just a changing of the system.
Absolutely.
And I think as we continue to read, I think that point is going to become crystal clear.
Right, Rio. And I think the way you just termed it was perfect. It's just a changing of the system, the tweaking of white supremacy, just the tweaking it a little bit and moving it into a different direction for the new goals and plans that they have for sucking and stealing the energy away from the people. Different form of it.
Yes, sir. So, did you want to start? You want me to continue reading, or did you want to
go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. I think you're coming with it.
Okay. Well, that the black slaves were emancipated at the end of the Civil War appears to have been an economic sanction against the rebel South, not the morally superior or the righteous idealism of the northern abolitionists. Black slaves were considered private property, and the government cannot take private property without just compensation.
Mm-hmm.
I also, at this time, would like to emphasize that when South Carolina seceded from the United States technically was no more.
Right. Absolutely.
So you have a president, you have a so-called president. He's still a president of maybe the Union States, but of the United States that is now non-existent. He has no power,
none,
to emancipate anything, make any kind of proclamations that that any state was bound to observe or be subject to follow.
Yes, sir.
So that was just a ploy. It was a strategic plan, and I agree with Brother Scotty. Abraham Lincoln was a lawyer, so I believe that it was a very strategic plan. To keep to enforce the North's will and maintain the cohesion of the United States by forcing the southern states to, not secede.
Absolutely, and it had nothing to do with him being Honest Abe and him having this great moral convictions that blacks should be free and that freedom for all brothers. That was not the case. As we continue, when you keep reading, Rio, we're gonna read some quotes directly from Abraham Lincoln himself, and it ain't gonna be no love all. he ain't coming with that at all. So go ahead, Brother Rio.
And at this particular time, because citizenship was determined by the state, not the federal government, citizens in all the Union states were divided as to whether or not the black slaves ought to be freed, and black freemen ought to have the right of state citizenship that white male property owners enjoyed.
Hold on, Rio. That says it all right there. And he's saying that citizenship was determined by the state. And if you look at that, that lets you know they don't flipped it, because now our citizenship is determined by this federal concept, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. They flipped it. And like they said there, and then the citizens in all the Union states were divided as to whether or not. So the people in the citizens themselves was, I don't know if we should let these brothers go.
Right, and each state had its own discretion as to whether they wanted to do that or not.
Absolutely.
So the citizens within each state were talking amongst themselves, hey, how do we want to handle this? But, if Georgia decided one thing, it didn't necessarily mean that South Carolina had to follow suit.
Right. Absolutely.
So, and even the U.S. Supreme Court was also unresponsive to social legislation or to claims of individual rights of the blacks. Racism has always been central to America's political agenda and at all levels of government, and a hotly debated and contentious issue since the founding of the Republic, because we know that the country was founded on slavery.
Yes.
Abraham Lincoln, though portrayed as righteous in other areas of his life, did not personally believe in the equality of the races as evidenced by his quote below. So this is what Brother Scotty was talking about. I will say that I repeat, I will say I am not in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. Am not in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. And I will say in addition that there is a physical difference between the white and black races which will ever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality.
Wow.
What you think about that, brother?
Tells you straight up what he was thinking. That history just basically selling everybody a whole bunch of pack of lies. That's all they're doing.
Right. And when they talk about Abraham Lincoln, I never hear them mention this particular quote.
No.
At all.
All they're doing is bringing that Honest Abe stuff.
Right. So I can't see the board, brother. So I don't know if anybody's got their hand raised or not. So you might want to keep a lookout for that.
Okay.
But from there we flow into what did become the 13th Amendment. So the 13th Amendment freed the slaves from physical bondage. The Reconstruction period after the Civil War involved a military coup d'etat by the federal United States government.
The federal United States. Hold on, say that again, Brother Rio. Come on with that one more again.
The Reconstruction period after the Civil War involved a military coup d'etat by the federal United States government.
Yes, it did.
What does that mean? De facto. They came in, they kicked in the door of the South, and they said, nah, we ain't breaking up. we're going to be together forever.
And military and martial law was declared at that moment.
Yes, sir.
And
it has not been effectively lifted since the Civil War.
That's right. So you had an Enrollment Act of 1863 where the military and martial law was declared in the Enrollment Act of 1863, and that Enrollment Act of 1863 has not been lifted. So, like we were talking about, perpetual state of war.
And all these people who saying, you know, martial law is coming, no. Martial law is here, and it's been here.
Yeah, and look what it says here, and this is where Brother Bragg really come in and be like, he'll hit you with this, because at this time, when we're telling you that the coup d'etat was taken, where they took over, the federal government took over the country, and they put in military and martial law was declared due to the Enrollment Act of 1863, and that enabled them to also put the Admiralty Maritime Military Martial Law flag with the gold fringes was placed in many state courts across the country, signifying emergency war powers were in effect and the Constitution was in effect suspended.
And we can still see those gold fringes when you go into the court today.
Mm-hmm.
As well as we know that the Constitution has been kind of usurped, because, you know, they started creating, UCC, which were commercial codes.
Absolutely.
To govern military or admiralty or martial law.
Absolutely.
So, you know, that's been the primary jurisdiction of the federal court since the suspension of the Constitution. So.
Okay, hold on. Area code 559.
Yeah, this is Scotty again. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, a quick question before I make a comment. What is that text you're reading? Do you know who wrote it? Because at times it seems like it's coming from a cracker's perspective.
Okay, tell me why. Tell me what you think.
Well, some of the language that it's using, it sounds real resentful of the federal occupation of the South that occurred during the so-called Reconstruction, which wasn't a Reconstruction. Well, yeah, it was the Reconstruction of the South, but also the Reconstruction of white supremacy. There was a book study done on the cows. But, you know, when I hear about the troops that were occupying the South, let's not forget who these troops were and what they were doing. These were black troops, man. These were former victims of slavery. And, you know, going back to the Emancipation Proclamation, Frederick Douglass called it a stupendous fraud because it didn't free all the victims of slavery, only those in the Confederacy. Kentucky did not lead the Union, so they were allowed to keep their victims of slavery. So that's evidence right there that it was never Lincoln's intent to abolish slavery. They forced his hand, and they were losing. The federal government was getting beat by the South, and that was like a Hail Mary. That Emancipation Proclamation was a Hail Mary. Okay, let me free these victims of slavery and get them on, use them to beat down these Confederate states. So the true occupation was mostly black troops that was protecting black people from the Klan. This is when Ulysses S. Grant was in office, you know, during part of that Reconstruction period. And he even got Congress to pass the Klan Act. It's also known as the Civil Rights Act of 1861 or 71. No, it would have to be 1871 because 61 was during the Civil War. Klan Act, it was also known as the Klan Act, where they empowered these troops to go arrest these terrorists and put them on trial with black jurors sitting on the jury, which Lincoln never wanted, as y'all just got through reading. So I'm glad he caught a bullet to the back of his head anyway. But anyway, you know, I'm just saying, we have to, you know, whatever we claiming, but if we talking about victims of slavery, we have to keep in mind their position during that period, and they were the troops that was occupying the South, man, and kicking in them cracker doors and all of that. And then what happened after Ulysses S. Grant? They moved them black troops out the South, and where did they send them? To go kill Indians in the West. I hang up.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And they did it quite willingly.
Yeah, hold on for a sec, Brother Rhea. Area code 662. What is your name and your comment? Area code 662. Okay. All right, Brother Rhea. I'm sorry. It was someone in Tunica, Mississippi is what it says, and they had unmuted themselves.
Oh, no, go ahead, brother.
No, go ahead. They were just listening. They've been listening for a while, but they might have accidentally unmuted themselves. So let's continue on. And like I said, Brother Rio and Brother Scotty and Brother Thomas, you see how the first thing they say, hey man, where that information come from? That's good, and that's what I like. And I think that's where we all need to be. You know what I'm saying? Let's deal with that source. Let me throw some ideas in there and what some things that I've read and some things that I know. Tell me where you come. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of information out there and there's a lot of faulty sources as well. So sometimes we can, steal, sharpen steel and get down to the bottom grits of it. You feel me?
Oh yeah. As well as introducing other information that it may spark a light bulb of okay. Well, this kind of goes with that. Not only does it contradict something else, but, hey, okay, this goes with that. And, it makes more sense. Mm-hmm. Makes more common sense. So, let's go and let's research and see if, if it's a rabbit in that hole.
Right.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Brother Thomas.
Yeah. That's why I asked earlier, because I'm listening and I'm like the Tsar of Russia, and I'm thinking at that time he has very limited power, and they're about to have a huge revolution in Russia about 10 or 15 years after this. So they're really not free yet.
Executed.
Yes, he was. Yeah, and they still were pretty much under that caste system of that house of this and house of that caste system. They still weren't free yet until they had their Bolshevik revolution. They were still under British occupation. But I think that it's definitely an interesting perspective on the way things might have happened, and changes everything in the structure of things. If it did happen that way, I just would like to commend Scotty, because what he said was definitely true. They took them soldiers and put them right to go kill their ancestors going west, to broaden their country even further. And what you guys were talking about earlier, it's very few, it's very limited strands of DNA that separate humans from other animals. I think we have like 98 strands or something like that. I think a wolf might have like 96. I mean, it's a very small difference. So there's definitely a way that I think humans and animals can spread diseases to each other. And, so that's what I wanted to say about that,
But Thomas, okay, because we know you're having the spreading of diseases because you're having sexually transmitted diseases that are spread from animals or, field animals to humans. So we know that those type of things are being mixed. And why do you think specifically when it comes to these bovine and Vishnu viruses that they have to grow it in human tissue and culture?
Well, you have to look at how do they come up with their science. We read a book on the cows called The Immortal Cells of Henrietta Lacks.
Yes, sir.
That's how those black cells is how they study all their science. So to me, it just seems like if he's a mad scientist. It's probably easier for them to administer. We realize it's easier for them to do it that way, to make it spread faster. So So it has to go through the tissues and the cells and things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
What I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah. What you think, Rio?
Also, remember, all these diseases they have is anything with a H1, you got H2N1, H3N1, then it goes up to H whatever, N whatever, then, H2N1, H2N2, H2. So they have so many different rare. Those are all stuff they created.
Right.
Anytime they put that H and that N in there, that's human. That's them doing it. It's not natural.
Yes, sir. What would you? Yes, sir.
Right. And the only thing I was gonna say is, the only thing that I can really question is, the classification system, because, I'm of the opinion that, there is no true dis-ease. There's only dis-ease of the body. So, these are all just manifestations that help to create an imbalance in the body. And through that imbalance of the body is susceptible to the opportunity to be overrun by different organisms that, that are aggressive and, natural, thriving, and seek to live and, follow their own agenda. So, in layman terms, I just feel that, they just slap on a label of symptoms and they give those symptoms a particular name.
Mm-hmm.
And because we don't have the technology or the know-how to check them on that, it's a lot. That's why you have a lot of things that have similar symptoms. And again, they can monetize that because any drug that they want to come out with, they say, okay, well, this works on this works on that, so, we're going to start off with atropine being a cure for leukemia. And then, within the next 6 to 8, maybe 10 years, it's in, them little blue pills, and it's supposed to help you with an erection, So, they recycle and repurpose a lot of these drugs that are supposed to help, a particular disease, but, we know it's really targeted for a particular symptom, but they can just market it in different. And in fact, after what it was initially supposed to help.
Yes, sir. Playing games,
I got,
buddy.
Brother.
Huh? Come again, Brother Rio.
Oh, I said that's all I got on that topic, brother.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well then let me finish back up on where we was at. But
one more thing, brother, before I have to travel to work. I just want to say, man, let's not forget that they had implemented those Libra codes, which is pretty much why we have the executive order. Everything now is done through executive order. That's the Libra codes.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to keep the government running, he had to implement that because there was no more government.
Right, sir.
Like you said,
the martial law.
Yeah, this is all a fake government, man. This ain't the United States no more. They created that D.C. Organic Act in 1871, which created Washington, D.C.
Right.
Put the government into that 10 square miles. And everything that you think is the United States is right there. All this is supposed to be sovereign states, and it's all run under this federal dictatorship.
Right.
That's all I wanted to say, man.
Yes, sir. No.
On point.
Yeah.
It is no longer the republic.
Yes, no longer
that it was, originally created to be.
And that's what the question was: emancipation or slavery for all? Was they really emancipating people, or are they bringing slavery onto each and every one of us? And so I'm saying they brought slavery to each and every one of us. There was no emancipation. When they talk about the coup d'état, the federal the republic. There was a coup d'etat that occurred. At that point, it was slavery for all.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And I think, that the next part that you're going into is going to highlight that even further.
Yeah, okay, let me get to it, Brother Rio. Admiralty maritime law has been the primary jurisdiction of the federal courts since the Constitution. Southern senators were taken out of office by force during the Civil War and replaced with military officers who then voted for the 14th Amendment, which was actually the 15th. The 14th or the 15th Amendment was adopted under martial law. If and when martial law ends, so do all the so-called laws instituted under military authority. The 14th or the 15th Amendment was a fraud from the beginning, instituted during times of great instability and duress for the nation. The 14th or 15th Amendment was not lawfully ratified by the required 2/3 of the Union of States. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which are actually the 14th, 15th, and 16th, also known as the Reconstruction Amendments, were declared to be ratified in a proclamation by the Secretary of State on July 28, 1868, which attempted withdrawals by Ohio and New Jersey. You feel me, Rio?
Fire, brother.
And this is what a Judge Taney says. While the Union survived the Civil War, the Constitution did not. In its place arose a more promising basis for justice and equality, the 14th Amendment. That was Associate Justice Thurgood Marshall. And this is Judge Taney right here. I'm sorry, I said that was Thurgood Marshall said that. Now, Judge Taney said, as long as the Constitution endured, this Supreme Court must exist with it, deciding in peaceful forms of judicial proceedings the angry and irritating controversies between sovereignties. So the sovereign state citizens of the South became prisoners of war after the conclusion of the hostilities and were forced, along with all the southern states, to accept the federal government as their superior authority. This included the unconditional surrender of the sovereignty of the southern states and the southern state citizens, who, like the former slaves, became the 14th or 15th Amendment U.S. citizens, subjects, and property of the federal government also. Is that what we not been telling our brother Rio?
Boom. They enslaved everybody.
Everybody, because they put you in this status. To be relegated to the same class and citizenship as the newly freed black slaves created huge amounts of animosity, hatred, and resentment by Southern whites, not only toward the federal government, but especially toward the newly freed black slaves. Oh shoot! All you got to do is you read that book, the Warmth of Other Suns, the Great Migration, about how brothers was getting treated coming up out the South. All you got to do is read that. That'll clearly tell you the racial hatred that the whites was feeling towards the brothers. But instead of focusing on the federal government as the object of their rage, race became the issue and continues to this very day. I agree with that, but I hear what Brother Thomas and Scotty's saying about that European perspective and tinge on it. But that is true. A lot of these, in my opinion, militia, Europeans, racist white folks are really mad at the government, but they take their rage out on black people. What you think of that?
I agree. By design.
Yeah. And then it's also the emancipated black slaves suffered tremendous abuse and inappropriate scapegoating by the newly disenfranchised southern state citizens. This fueled racial hatred, which has continued to this very day in the South and around the country. The true hate crimes are a symptom still of the deep divide between North and South. What's now considered white supremacy is a twisted and distorted version of the southern state citizens' maligned attempt at restoring their own beleaguered sovereignty. Oh, you hear that? He's trying to find a way out of there. Somehow the federal government got off the hook and black people got the brunt. Outfits like the Ku Klux Klan rode the passions of this resentment and hatred and executed acts of terrorism against blacks for generations. The claim that the South was going to rise again just never materialized. It was beaten and its sovereignty destroyed, except in the hearts and minds of many Southern leaders who held true to the old republic despite its defeat. The Civil War, instead of freeing the slaves, made slaves, and chattel property of everyone south of the Mason-Dixie line.
Made slaves of everyone north of the Mason-Dixie line as well.
Yes, sir. I guess he's saying they were already that.
Right, because they were part of the Federal Union.
Yeah.
But I think that statement was accurate. You know, what's now considered white supremacy is a twisted and distorted version of the Southern state citizens' maligned attempt at restoring their own belligerent sovereignty. Because, you know, I think they were of the mindset that, you know, they were actually free at some point. You know, they had people working for them, and they could amass 100% of the profit, you know, and they had a modicum of life that was very cushy for them, you know. So they continued to long from them old glory days, but, you know as well as I do know that it's still based on the victimization of the people.
Yeah,
so,
right, because them glory days that they want back, they stole them, and they weren't glory days for our people.
You know,
so them hollering, these white folks hollering, we're state citizens and we're under the common law. Nah, you was victimizing brothers to even have that status then.
Right, and that's why, you know, I think
the indigenous people,
you know, we need to be careful about saying we need to return to state citizenship. Because it's also going to give rise to a certain particular paradigm,
right,
in which a lot of these white folks is longing for.
Right.
So, crying for state citizenship, you know, be careful what you ask for.
You ain't lying.
Especially when there are other options available for melanated people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because we were never intended to be state citizens.
Right.
Period.
Yes, sir, Brother Real. Area code 662 unmuted themselves. Area code 662. Okay, the second time. You got me twice. Never. No, what I did. Yes, sir, Brother Real. Hey, man. I feel it's a good show, brother. The information that we hit on in the beginning about AIDS and Ebola, that's serious. I mean, man. People go out and get emerging viruses, AIDS and Ebola, Nature, Accident, or Intentional by Leonard G. Horowitz. This is also the same book that this is a well-read book and research, and this is the same book that Dr. Umar Johnson was kicking out of in that lecture when he was speaking on the same topic as well, brother.
Right, as well as people can, you know, look up that Global 2000 agenda, you know, under President Carter. So, you know, they can look at that as a resource as well. And, you know, next week, I'm going to have some sources that will shed some more light on that Alexander II linked to Lincoln and his assistance in that Civil War. Because, you know, I see how that could be a point of contingency because, you know, to me, I look at that and I see a larger plot, you know, that fits a particular kind of theme that, you know, that we're seeing throughout history, you know, such as the Rothschilds banking, you know, both sides in an effort to gain control of that country's economics. And the best way to do that is to have that country split. You know, so you get each side of it indebted to you. So
North and South Korea,
because you control the economics.
North and South Korea, they just splits the Sudan. Remember, now they got North and South Sudan. They're also looking to split Nigeria. So you just made a real good point, my brother.
All right. Well, that's all I got to say, brother. You know, everybody stay safe. And please.
Hey, I got one more thing to say if I can.
Hold on, brother. Okay, go ahead, brother Thomas.
I just wanted to add, because I've been doing some study with the brother Bragg about this. There was a lot of white slaves as well.
Yes, sir.
And, I think that they were given certain promises, being that they were so-called indentured servants, that their slavery ended, and they were supposed to be granted certain things. And when they emancipated the black slaves and the white slaves, now they're on an even keel. I think that's a lot of that resentment. Those people that you're talking about that resented it so much and didn't look at the government and look toward those black people. Those free white slaves, you know, who had been promised land and opportunity if they just worked for 7 or 12 years. And a few books on this, you know, they got a bunch of ads, how it was advertised in Europe. You know, come over, work 7 years, when, you know, and you'll be free. And they didn't know when they got here, you know, they were going straight into some shadow type situation.
Right.
Right. And a lot of tricks to keep them on there longer than those 7 years as well.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of promises made to them, and I think that ended that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, they felt like they'd always be in a position where, you know, they you know, especially with what they've been promised, that they'd have a leg up, that if there was a dime and a nickel to be had, they'd have the dime and the brother would have a nickel. And when they see the possibility of that not being the case, it becomes a serious problem in terms of the sentiment and the way they feel and the anger that they want to express towards black folk.
And Thomas, that also goes towards a strategy that they often employ, because I can see exactly what you're saying being applied to, you know, the free black or Negro people when they offer them sharecropping. You know, they use those similar strategies. You know, hey, you work this land for a certain amount of time, or, you know, you get this amount of profit, and, you know, you could pay it off, and, you know, you can have and do what you want. But, you know, it was just tricks to keep them indebted, to keep them working, and to be able to, you know, take over their resources by, you know, giving them another scenario of reaching, quote unquote, the American dream, which goes back to what Brother Tommy was bringing up in the beginning of the show with the article about, you know, the people, the immigrants being harassed by police in Atlanta. You know, I think they're going to, you know, propagate a new American story, you know, just rehash it and rework it, and they're going to sell it to another group of people. So, you know, always somebody out there who don't know or study the history, you know, to fall for the same old tricks.
Yes, sir.
What you feel about that, Brother Thomas?
I'm with you. I think we did a good job of covering. I think Brother Thomas's comments was right on point. I just read what L.A. Ramon just wrote. He on point. You know, we need to work on ending martial law. You know, we need to get back to being indigenous, sovereign. You know what I'm saying? Tied to our land and our nation. I mean, anything other than that got you in a status where you off your square, and when you off your square, ain't no telling what could happen.
Yes, sir. I agree. As well as we need to start looking toward the future, because I think martial law might even be a wrap at this point, because, you know, I believe that it's a transition over into the UN and whatever they want to call their structure of, you know, legislation and status, you know, politics and all that other kind of stuff. So, you know, I think we need to start, you know, putting our eyes forward so we can identify these same old tricks they're going to try to employ, just put a new dress on it.
Yes, sir. They do it all the time.
They do it all the time.
Okay, all right, Brother Rio. Like I said, fam, appreciate all the energy and the positive comments those we brought forward. Brother Rio, I appreciate your perspective and the knowledge and information that you bring. Melanated Roots every Monday from 8 to 10. And go ahead and say what you got to say, bro. But Brother Tommy signing out. Catch you next Monday.
I just wish everybody, you know, well wishes and high vibrations throughout the week. Keep your head up and on a swivel, and let's continue to study, research, and bring information to the table. So steel can sharpen steel, and the more we rise together, then the more we're gonna be effective in planning alternatives to the system and thinking outside of the box. So protect yourselves and each other, and spread the love. And that's all I got to say. We'll see y'all next week, 8 to 10, and be safe. Peace.
Good morning, evening, friends. Here's your friendly announcer. I have serious news to pass on to everybody. What I'm about to say could mean the world's disaster. Could change your joy and laughter to tears and pain. It's that love in need of love today. Don't delay, send your banner right away.
The organized
tuned in to the Black Talk Radio Network. For podcasts and live program scheduling, visit us on the web at blacktalkradionetwork.com.